All right, in prompt 2, we're asked to describe the transformation of the Christian church, including details from each of the following time periods: the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, and the Protestant Reformation. So, as we're designing this essay, we need to look and see how the development of the Christian church came about through each of these three different time periods. So the Roman Empire is going to have kind of the genesis of the Christian church, the development of Christianity and the arrival of Jesus Christ. The Middle Ages is going to see the rise of the power of the church. And then the Protestant Reformation is going to see a challenge to the power of the church. So as you're developing a thesis for this, you're going to want to make sure that you include those three elements, the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, and the Protestant Reformation, inside of that thesis. But let's go through these three time periods and take a look at them in a little bit more detail. So the Roman Empire, as I said, is going to kind of be the start of the Christian church, the rise of the Christian church. And that is primarily because this is the development or the formation of it through the life of Christ. Jesus Christ was born while the Roman Empire was in existence. And as we know through the story of Christ's birth and his eventual crucifixion and the time period that occurred after it, Rome goes through a period of time where they are unsure how to respond to this new Christianity, this new challenge to Roman authority, and it actually sparks a time period of persecution. So after Christ is crucified and rises again from the dead, what we read about through the rest of the New Testament is a pattern of the spread of the gospel and this new idea that Christ brought to the earth as a man. But this ultimately bumps up against the authority of the Roman Empire, and it leads the Roman Empire into a time period of persecution where early believers, Christians, were persecuted for their faith. But what's interesting is that this slowly begins to make a change. It slowly begins to become accepted. Christianity continues to grow, though it faces persecution, until it actually becomes the official state religion of the Roman Empire. And this is where we get the rise of the Roman Catholic Church. This rises out of the Roman Empire and eventually becomes the standard of this empire. So this is kind of the start of the Christian church. Now let's skip ahead a little bit to the Middle Ages, and we're going to see a much more powerful Catholic Church. We see the power of the Pope begins to expand. The Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church, still is the leader of the Catholic Church. But during the Middle Ages, the popes begin to actually kind of flex their spiritual power, their spiritual muscles, and they begin to extend their power beyond national boundaries so that they can actually challenge the power of kings in individual countries like France or England, because the church is present all across the world. And so if the Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church, he's going to have power that is able to supersede the individual power of kings in individual countries. And during the Middle Ages, we see the popes becoming more and more interested in politics. They start to become more and more interested in gaining power and wealth. And with this, we see the rise of corruption inside of the church. A good example of that is the sale of indulgences, which Martin Luther, we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but he pushes back very strongly on the sale of indulgences, this idea of the Catholic Church granting forgiveness for sins, or actually granting relief for people who are in purgatory if you pay money to the church. And so the power of the church begins to expand, not just politically, but also culturally across the European continent. Another good example of the power of the church is seen in the Crusades, which was a holy war that was fought in order to retake control of the city of Jerusalem from the Muslims that showcase the significant power of the church to be able to mobilize several countries together to gather troops and push back against the control of the Muslims who had garnered control of Jerusalem. So let's go to the last point of this essay, which is the Protestant Reformation in the early 1500s. And the key player in the Protestant Reformation, obviously, is Martin Luther. And so what does he do in terms of the transformation of the church? Well, he is a monk who is studying and teaching and preaching inside of the church. And he, inside of the Catholic Church, we should point out. So he's a loyal member of the Catholic Church, but he becomes increasingly frustrated and concerned with the with discrepancies that he's seeing between what the church is teaching and what the Bible is teaching. And so he publishes these differences, these concerns that he has in a work that's known as the 95 Theses. And he stands by this principle as salvation is by faith alone. So he's going to push very strongly against the sale of indulgences. He's going to push back against that very, very strongly and say the church is wrong about this. He's also going to push back against the legalism that the church was pushing at this time, that was forcing people into more and more guilt along the way. And ultimately, Luther is going to be responsible for starting the Protestant Reformation. The Catholic Church excommunicates him, kicks him out of the church, declares him to be a heretic, and actually puts a death sentence on his head. He escapes and ends up moving to Germany, where he falls under the control of the German princes who are protecting him, but he's able to start his own church, which becomes known as the Lutheran Church, or the denomination known as Lutheranism. This creates a divide in Christendom, or in the Christian church. We now have Catholic churches and Lutheran churches, and it's going to lead to significant national conflicts as well. Germany gets pulled apart. The Holy Roman Empire gets pulled apart over this issue of whether or not they're going to be a Catholic country or a Lutheran country, and ultimately they have to fight a war over this and come to a treaty which says that individual kingdoms in Germany can decide if they would like to be Lutheran or Catholic. But it's going to create conflict, massive national conflict, and it's also going to create significant ongoing conflict between the two now divisions that are present inside of the church. And this rise of Lutheranism is going to lead to further splits in Protestantism as well. There's going to be additional reformers who come after Luther who disagree with him and say, no, the church should go in this direction. So those are the three main early progressions, I would say, of the Christian church. You've got the introduction, the person of Christ in the Roman Empire. You've got the Middle Ages, where you see the rise of the power of the popes. And then you've got the Protestant Reformation, where Luther splits the Catholic Church apart and creates a brand new church of Lutheranism. So with this essay, I would divide this up with an introductory paragraph with a thesis that addresses these 3 points, these 3 areas, and then have a body paragraph for each of those 3 points, and then wrap it up with a conclusion that reviews those points and brings those 3 points to a conclusion. All right, that is it, guys. Thanks for listening.